The train wheeled to a grinding halt, steel screeching against steel, and Evelyn Harper clutched her worn carpetbag tighter. Through the dust-caked window, she glimpsed the end of civilization, or what passed for it in Wyoming territory. The conductor's voice rang out, "Last stop before the territories." She'd left Boston 14 days ago with nothing but $23, a change of clothes, and a one-way ticket signed A. Calder. No promises attached. No sweet words of courtship. Just a ticket west and an advertisement torn from the Boston Herald. Respectable man seeks mail-order bride. Must be willing to help raise children. Wyoming territory. The other passengers filed out rough men in canvas pants. A few hardy women with sun-weathered faces. Evelyn stayed seated, her fingers working the frayed edge of her mother's handkerchief. Outside, the world stretched endlessly in shades of red dirt and bleached grass. "Miss, this is where you get off." The conductor stood beside her seat, not unkind, but impatient. She nodded, gathered her courage like scattered coins, and stepped into the blast of western heat. The platform was little more than warped planks over packed earth. A few buildings lined what might generously be called a street. Everything wore a coat of red dust, the storefronts, the horses tied to posts. Even the air itself seemed tinged with rust. "You the Boston girl?" A man approached, weathered as old leather, wearing a badge that read Deputy. His eyes assessed her city dress, her pale hands, the way she stood like she might blow away in the next strong wind. "I'm looking for the stage to Lone Mesa," Evelyn said, proud her voice didn't waver. "That'd be me, Deputy Calderon." He touched his hat brim. "Sheriff sent me to collect you. It's another day's ride." The stage was a bone-rattling contraption that seemed held together by prayer and baling wire. Evelyn wedged herself between mailbags and supply crates, her carpetbag clutched in her lap. Deputy Calderon took the driver's seat without another word. As they rolled away from the train depot, Evelyn allowed herself one look back. The iron rails stretched east toward everything she'd known the narrow beds of the Boston foundling home. The propositions from men old enough to be her grandfather, the factory owner who'd tried to buy her like a bolt of cloth. "If I must be a wife," she'd told herself that night, standing at the crossroads of her life. "At least let it be to a man who upholds the law." The landscape swallowed them whole. Red rocks rose like ancient bones from the earth. The sky pressed down, vast and merciless. They stopped once to water the horses at a creek that barely trickled, and Evelyn watched Calderon scan the horizon with the wariness of prey. "Indians?" she asked. "Not for years," he said. "Other troubles, though." He didn't elaborate. Night fell like a curtain dropped. They made camp beside a cluster of cottonwoods, and Calderon built a small fire. He offered her jerky and hardtack, which she accepted, though it tasted like salted leather. "The sheriff," she ventured. "Mr. Calder, what manner of man is he?" Calderon poked the fire with a stick. "Good man. Fair. Got his hands full with them kids since their mama passed." "How long ago?" "2 winters now. The consumption took her quick." He glanced at her. "You ever dealt with children?" "At the foundling home, yes. Though dealt with seemed a cold way to put it. She'd held babies who cried for mothers they'd never know, taught letters to children who'd rather be anywhere else, mended clothes for girls who'd soon face the same choices she had. These ain't foundlings." Calderon said, "They remember their mama. The oldest boy, especially Eli. He's got opinions about his PA taking a new wife." Evelyn pulled her shawl tighter. "I'm not trying to replace anyone." "No, then why are you here?" The question hung between them like smoke. Why was she here for freedom? For a chance at something better than factory work, or worse. For the wild hope that a lawman with 4 children might offer what she'd never had, a real home. "Because I chose to be," she said finally. Calderon nodded slow, like she'd passed some test. "Get some sleep. We start early." She dozed fitfully against a mailbag, starting at every sound, coyotes yipping, Wind through the cottonwoods, the creak of saddle leather as Calderon kept watch. Once, she woke to see him standing at the edge of the firelight, rifle in hand, staring into the darkness like he expected it to stare back. Morning came pale and dusty. They broke camp in silence, and the stage lurched on across the endless country. By noon, mesas rose on either side, red as dried blood. The road, if it could be called that, wound between them like a snake's track. There, Calderon said eventually, Lone Mesa. The town materialized from the heat shimmer, a main street wide enough for 2 wagons to pass. False front buildings trying to look bigger than they were. A church steeple poked at the sky. Dogs slept in whatever shade they could find. As they rolled down Main Street, faces appeared in windows and doorways. A woman in a flour-dusted apron stepped out of what must be the bakery. 2 men lounging outside the saloon straightened up to watch. Children peered around their mothers' skirts. The stage stopped in front of a building marked Sheriff. Evelyn's heart hammered against her stays. This was it, the moment that would shape the rest of her life, for better or worse. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was taller than she'd imagined, broader through the shoulders, dark hair touched with early gray, face carved by sun and wind into sharp angles. But it was his eyes that caught her, gray as gunmetal, holding shadows she couldn't read. Behind him, 4 small faces crowded the doorway. A teenage boy with his father's sharp features and suspicious eyes. A girl about 10, watching with bright intelligence. A younger boy clutching a wooden toy. And a tiny girl, barely 3, sucking her thumb and half hiding behind her sister's skirts. The whole street seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere, a shopkeeper whispered, "That's her, the mail-order bride." Evelyn climbed down from the stage on shaking legs. Her traveling dress was wrinkled, her hair escaping its pins despite her best efforts. She felt every eye on her as she retrieved her carpet bag and faced the man who'd sent for her. "Miss Harper," he said. His voice was deep, carefully neutral. "I'm Abraham Calder." Mr. Calder." She managed a steady voice, even attempted a small smile. "Thank you for the ticket." Something flickered in his eyes' surprise. Maybe that she'd thanked him for so little. He glanced at his children, then back at her. "These are mine. Eli, Nora, Ben, and Rosalie." The older boy, Eli, looked her up and down like she was livestock at auction. "She's awful young." "Eli?" One word from his father, sharp as a whip crack. "It's all right," Evelyn said. "I am young, but I'm here, and I'm willing to work." The little one, Rosalie, pulled her thumb from her mouth. "Mama," she whispered. The word hit like a physical blow. Nora quickly hushed her sister, but the damage was done. Eli's face went hard as granite, and even little Ben stopped playing with his toy. "Let's get you settled," Calder said, his voice rougher now. "Eli, help with her bag." "I can manage," the boy said coldly. "You'll help," his father repeated, and this time it wasn't a request. They formed an awkward procession, Calder leading, Evelyn following, the children trailing behind like ducklings, unsure of this new addition to their pond. The house sat at the end of the street, a tidy frame building with a wide porch and actual glass windows. Better than she'd hoped for. Inside, everything spoke of a woman's absence trying to be filled by masculine effort. The floors were swept but not scrubbed. Curtains hung straight but faded. A vase sat empty on a table still set for 5, not 6. "Your room," Calder said, indicating a small chamber off the kitchen, "was the sewing room. We fixed it up. A narrow bed with a quilt that had seen better days, a washstand with a chipped pitcher, a single nail on the wall for hanging clothes. It was more privacy than she'd had in 18 years. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. He shifted, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Supper's at 6. The children can show you where things are." He left her there, and she heard him telling the children to mind their manners, help when asked, and remember what their mother would have wanted. That last bit stung. She could hear it in their silence. Alone, Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed and finally let her hands shake. Outside her window, the foreign landscape stretched toward mountains that looked like broken teeth. She'd traded everything familiar for this, a stern man with grief shadows in his eyes, 4 children who didn't want her, and a town already whispering about the mail-order bride. Her mother's handkerchief was damp with perspiration. She folded it carefully and tucked it under her thin pillow. Then she unpinned her hair, splashed water on her face, and prepared to make supper for her new family. In the kitchen, she found Nora already peeling potatoes with quick, practiced strokes. The girl glanced up, wary as a wild thing. "I don't need help," Nora said. "I didn't offer any." Evelyn found an apron hanging on a peg and tied it around her waist. "But perhaps you could tell me what your father likes for supper." "Anything filling. He ain't particular." "Isn't," Evelyn corrected gently, then caught herself. "Never mind. What do you like?" Nora's knife paused. "Nobody asks that." "I'm asking—" The girl studied her for a long moment. "Mama used to make cornbread on Saturdays, with molasses." "Then we'll have cornbread." They worked in careful silence, Nora watching from the corner of her eye as Evelyn found her way around the unfamiliar kitchen. Once, when Evelyn couldn't locate the salt, Nora pointed wordlessly to a high shelf. Through the window, she could see Calder in the yard, showing Ben how to mend a harness. The boy's hands were clumsy with the leather, but his father was patient, guiding without taking over. It was the gentlest she'd seen him. "He's a good PA," Nora said, following her gaze. "Don't think otherwise." "I don't." He promised her. When Mama was dying, promised he'd find someone to help raise us proper. The words hung heavy between them. Evelyn understood now she wasn't chosen for herself, but for a promise made to a dying woman. Somehow, that made it easier. She wasn't replacing anyone. She was fulfilling an obligation. Supper was awkward. Everyone careful as cats around a new dog. Eli ate in sullen silence. Ben snuck looks at her when he thought she wasn't watching. Rosalie fell asleep in her chair, thumb in her mouth. And Calder, he ate methodically, his presence filling the room even in silence. After, as Evelyn cleared the dishes, she noticed something. There, on Calder's desk in the corner, lay a red silk neckerchief. Embroidered in the corner was a design horseshoe nails arranged in a pattern. Pretty, if you didn't know better. But something about it made her skin prickle. The way Calderone had scanned the horizon, the way Calder checked the windows before drawing the curtains. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Evelyn heard footsteps circle the house. Through her window, she glimpsed Calder's shadow, the glint of a rifle barrel. He wasn't checking for coyotes, that much was certain. In Boston, she'd fled men who thought they could buy her. Here, she'd bound herself to a man with secrets, children who didn't want her, and a town already passing judgment. But as she fingered her mother's handkerchief in the dark, Evelyn felt something she hadn't expected. Not regret. Despite everything, the dust, the silence, the weight of being unwanted, she didn't regret the choice. This was hers, chosen freely. Whatever came next, she'd meet it standing. Outside, Calder's footsteps continued their circuit, keeping watch, keeping secrets. In the distance, a coyote howled at the endless sky. The moment Evelyn stepped down from the mail coach, Lone Mesa went silent as a held breath. She stood there in her wrinkled traveling dress, carpetbag in hand, while the entire main street stopped to stare. The mail-order bride had arrived. Abraham Calder waited on the boardwalk outside his office, still as the posts holding up the awning. 4 children clustered behind him, Eli standing stiff-backed and hostile, Nora watching with sharp eyes, Ben fidgeting with a wooden knife, and little Rosalie half hidden behind her sister's skirts. "Miss Harper," Calder said, his voice carrying across the dusty street. "Welcome to Lone Mesa." The words were correct, but they held no warmth. Evelyn lifted her chin, aware of every eye upon her, the baker woman pausing mid-sweep. 2 cowboys lounging outside Tully's saloon. Mrs. Albright emerging from the church like a crow sensing carrion. "Mr. Calder," she managed, her throat dry from road dust. "Thank you for sending the ticket." Behind her, Deputy Calderon unloaded her single trunk. The thud as it hit the ground seemed to echo her new reality, everything she owned in the world, delivered to a stranger's door. "Mama?" Rosalie's tiny voice pierced the air. The word rippled through the watching crowd. Eli's face went hard, and he grabbed his baby sister's hand roughly. "She ain't Mama," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's just some woman Pa bought through the mail." "Eli." Calder's tone could have frozen whiskey. "Take your sisters and brother home, now." The boy glared but obeyed, herding the younger ones away. Only Nora looked back, her expression unreadable as prairie wind. Calder picked up Evelyn's trunk like it weighed nothing. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you settled before the whole town decides to hold court." They walked the gauntlet of Main Street, whispers following like dust devils. Evelyn kept her eyes forward, but she caught fragments awful young. "Pretty enough, I suppose. Those poor children. What's a lawman thinking, ordering a wife like she's dry goods?" The Calder house sat at the street's end, a modest frame building with a vegetable garden struggling against the drought. Inside, it was clean but cheerless floors swept by duty rather than care. Furniture arranged for function, not comfort. The ghost of a woman's touch lingered in faded curtains and a cracked china shepherdess on the mantel. "Your room," Calder said, indicating a small chamber off the kitchen. Someone had tried to make it welcoming, a quilt on the narrow bed, a pitcher and basin on the washstand, wildflowers wilting in a jar. "It's fine," Evelyn said. "Thank you." He set down her trunk and stood there, filling the doorway like he had more to say but couldn't find the words. "Finally, supper's at 6. The children know the routine." Then he was gone, leaving her alone in this strange room that smelled of new whitewash and old grief. The first supper was a disaster. Evelyn found the kitchen well stocked, but arranged by someone else's logic. She burned the biscuits while searching for salt. The beans were undercooked. The coffee came out weak as dishwater. Eli smirked through the entire meal. "Ma used to make biscuits that floated off the plate." "Then it's fortunate I'm not trying to be your ma," Evelyn replied, surprising herself with her steadiness. Ben paused in pushing beans around his plate. "What should we call you then?" "Evelyn will do, or Miss Harper, if you prefer." "That ain't proper," Nora said quietly. "You're Pa's wife now, or will be." An uncomfortable silence fell. Calder hadn't mentioned when or if there would be an actual wedding. The thought of being neither maiden nor wife, suspended between worlds, made Evelyn's stomach tighten. Time enough to sort that out. Calder said, "Eli, you'll help with dishes. Ben, see to the chickens. Nora, get Rosie ready for bed." "But Pa," Eli started. "You heard me." After the children scattered, Calder lingered at the table. "They'll come around," he said, though it sounded more like hope than certainty. "I don't expect them to love me, Mr. Calder. I just hope they'll let me help." He studied her with those storm-gray eyes. "Why did you answer my advertisement? A young woman like you must have had other options." The honest answer that all her other options involved men who saw her as property to be purchased stuck in her throat. "I wanted to come west," she said instead. "Start fresh. Running from something, toward something, I hope." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough. We all got our reasons." He rose, settling his hat. "I'll be making rounds. Bar the door behind me." "Is that necessary?" "Yes," he said, and offered no more. That night, Evelyn lay awake listening to the house breathe around her. Footsteps overhead, Eli pacing. Soft crying Rosalie missing her mother. And later, much later, the sound of Calder returning. The careful way he checked every window latch before climbing the stairs. Morning brought new challenges. Evelyn found Nora already in the kitchen, competently making porridge. "I can manage breakfast," the girl said, not quite meeting Evelyn's eyes. "Been doing it since—" "I'd like to learn your way," Evelyn said gently. "If you'll teach me." Nora considered this. "Ma kept things just so. Salt in the blue crock, coffee in the tin with the dented lid. Pa likes his eggs over easy, but Eli wants them scrambled. Ben won't eat them at all unless you hide them in something else. And Rosalie, porridge with extra molasses. She's easy." They worked side by side, Nora gradually thawing as she showed Evelyn the household rhythms. Through the window, they could see Calder splitting wood, his movements economical and fierce. "He does that when he's thinking," Nora observed. "Ma used to say he could solve all the world's problems if he had enough wood to split." "What's troubling him now?" Nora shrugged, but her eyes flicked to the road. Town things. After breakfast, Calder announced he was taking Evelyn to town. "You'll need supplies. Best to get it done." Eli's face darkened. "You're parading her around already." "I'm introducing my future wife to the merchants," Calder said evenly. "Unless you'd rather she starve for lack of knowing where to trade." The ride to town was silent, except for the creak of wagon wheels. Calder drove like he did everything else, controlled, watchful. His rifle rode between them. Loaded. "Is there something I should know?" Evelyn asked. "About the town, about dangers?" "Every town has its troubles. Ours are just older than some." Main Street was busier than yesterday, and their arrival caused another stir. Calder ignored it, helping Evelyn down with impersonal courtesy before leading her into Finch's general store. Mrs. Finch was a narrow woman who looked like she'd been pressed between heavy books. Her smile was vinegar sweet. "Sheriff Calder, and this must be your intended Miss Harper," Calder said firmly. "She'll be needing to establish accounts." Of course. Mrs. Finch's eyes catalogued every detail of Evelyn's appearance. "From Boston. I heard such a long way to come. You must have been very eager to leave." "I was eager to arrive," Evelyn corrected pleasantly. "Your town seems lovely." "Oh, we do our best to maintain proper standards, despite challenges." Her gaze flicked to Calder. "I suppose you've heard about our recent troubles." "That's enough. Mrs. Finch!" Calder's tone could have etched glass. "The lady needs flour, salt, and coffee to start." They moved through town like that, Calder introducing her briefly, cutting short any attempts at gossip. At the butcher's, the smithy, the feed store. Only at Albright's Mercantile did they meet real resistance. Mrs. Albright stood behind her counter like a judge at bench. The minister's wife had iron-gray hair and eyes like chips of flint. "Sheriff," she said coolly. "Miss Harper." "Ma'am?" Evelyn nodded. "I hope you understand the responsibility you're taking on." "Mrs." Albright said. "Those children have been through enough. They need stability. Proper moral guidance. I intend to provide both." "Do you, a girl barely out of childhood herself, entering into an arrangement that lacks the sanctity of proper courtship?" She turned to Calder. "When do you plan to make this official? Sheriff, the town has standards." "When I'm good and ready," Calder replied. "That's sufficient for your standards?" "Mrs." Albright's mouth pursed. "The Ladies' Aid Society meets Wednesdays. We'll expect Miss Harper to attend. We help guide young women in their Christian duties." "I'll consider it," Evelyn said, though the thought of sitting through moral instruction from this iron-spined woman made her teeth ache. "Outside," Calder muttered. "Don't let her buffalo you. She's got opinions about everyone. She seems concerned about propriety. She's concerned about control. Her and her Ladies' Aid Society think they run the moral compass of this town. They stopped at Tully's saloon to collect Deputy Calderon, while Calder went inside. Evelyn waited on the wagon seat, trying to look like she belonged. Two cowboys sauntered past, tipping their hats with grins that made her skin crawl. Well, the mail-order bride, pretty as advertised. "Leave her be, Hank," his companion warned, eyeing the sheriff's wagon. "Just being neighborly." Hank stepped closer, bringing the smell of whiskey and trail dust. "Gets lonely out here for a woman. If the sheriff don't treat you right, you let old Hank know." "The sheriff treats me fine," Evelyn said coldly. "Does he now? Man's got a reputation for being hard, cold-blooded. Some say, you know about." The saloon door banged open. Calder stood there, and something in his stance made both cowboys step back. "Gentlemen," he said, soft as a snake's warning, "I believe you have somewhere else to be." They scattered like quail. Calder climbed up beside Evelyn, jaw tight. "What did they mean?" she asked as they rolled away. "About your reputation. Nothing that concerns you." But that night, after the children were abed, Evelyn found something that suggested otherwise. She was tidying Calder's desk when she noticed it again, the red silk neckerchief with the horseshoe nail design. Beneath it, the corner of a telegram poked out. She shouldn't look. It wasn't her business. But something made her shift the papers just enough to read, "Pike's gang spotted near Chimney Rock. Exercise extreme caution." A floorboard creaked. She spun to find Calder in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked quietly. "I was just straightening. The telegram's a week old. Pike's probably in Colorado by now." "Who is Pike?" Calder moved into the room, suddenly making it feel small. "Someone from before. Nothing to do with you." "If there's danger." "There's always danger. This is the territory." He gathered the papers, including the neckerchief, and locked them in a drawer. "Best you remember that doors have bars for a reason." He left her standing there, heart racing. Through the window, she watched him resume his nightly patrol, rifle in hand, checking shadows. Whatever past haunted Abraham Calder, it was still very much alive. Later, lying in her narrow bed, Evelyn heard Rosalie crying again. This time, she rose and padded barefoot to the stairs. The little girl's door was open, and she could see Calder sitting on the bed. The child curled against his chest. "Shh, little bird, just a dream." "Want Mama," Rosalie whimpered. I know you do." His voice was different, gentle, almost broken. "But Mama can't come back. You got me, though. And Eli and Nora and Ben, we're still here. And the lady—" A long pause. "Yeah, the lady too, I suppose." Evelyn crept back to her room, throat tight. This wasn't the arrangement she'd imagined, a house full of grief, a town watching for moral failings, a man with secrets locked away like loaded guns. But listening to Calder comfort his daughter, she heard something else too. A father trying desperately to keep his promises, children needing more than he could give, a family held together by stubborn will and not much else. Maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe not. But she'd made her choice, bought with a one-way ticket. Tomorrow, she'd try again, better biscuits, stronger coffee, slower smiles for the children. And somehow, she'd find her place in this house of careful distances and unspoken fears. Outside, a coyote howled at the indifferent stars, and Abraham Calder walked his watch, guarding against dangers he wouldn't name. The market wagon lurched over a rut, and Evelyn gripped the seat to keep from sliding into Sheriff Calder. 3 weeks in Lone Mesa had taught her to read his moods by the set of his shoulders. Today they were rigid as fence posts. "Stay close when we get there," he said, eyes on the road. "Saturday market brings all kinds. The town square bustled with farmers, ranchers, and merchants. Evelyn had volunteered to sell eggs and preserves from the Calder garden, hoping to prove herself useful. Nora sat in the wagon bed, arranging jars with careful precision. "That's Jed Hutchins," the girl whispered, pointing to a man with tobacco-stained teeth. "Don't let him shortchange you. And there's Martha Willows. She'll gossip, but she pays fair." Evelyn nodded, grateful for the intelligence. Eli had refused to come, staying home with Ben and Rosalie. The boy's hostility hadn't softened, though he no longer made cutting remarks about her cooking. They'd barely set up when trouble arrived in the form of 3 trail hands, dust-covered and whiskey-bowled. The leader, a man with greasy hair and a lazy eye, sauntered over. "Well now, what have we here?" He picked up a jar of preserves, turning it in filthy hands. "Sheriff got himself a pretty little shopkeeper." "That'll be 15 cents, Evelyn said evenly. 15 cents, he laughed, showing yellow teeth. "Seems steep. Maybe we could work out a trade." His companions snickered. Evelyn felt Nora tense beside her, saw other market-goers carefully looking away. Where was Calder? He'd been talking to the blacksmith just moments ago. "The price is 15 cents, she repeated. "Pay or move along." The man leaned closer, breath rank with rot-gut whiskey. "Feisty. I like that in a woman, especially one that came mail order. Must be real accommodating to—" A hand fell on his shoulder, and he went rigid. Calder stood there, badge glinting in the morning sun. "Pardon me, Walt," Calder said, voice mild as milk. "You were just paying the lady for those preserves." Walt's lazy eye twitched. "Sheriff, didn't see you there." 15 cents. Calder's hand didn't move, but something in his grip made Walt wince. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss fair market prices in my office. Got a nice cell where we can talk real thorough." Walt fumbled for coins, dropped them on the table, and backed away. "No need for that. We're going." They slunk off like whipped dogs. Calder watched until they disappeared into Tully's saloon, then turned to Evelyn. "You all right?" "Fine." Her hand shook only slightly as she straightened the display. "Thank you." Part of the job. But his eyes lingered on her face, something almost soft in them. Then Nora sneezed, breaking the moment, and he was all business again. "I'll be close by." The rest of the market passed peacefully. Martha Willows did indeed gossip, pumping Evelyn for details about life in the Calder house while buying 3 jars of apple butter. Other women were more reserved, eyeing her like she might steal their husbands or corrupt their children. By noon, storm clouds gathered over Raven Draw, purple, black, and ominous. Calder appeared at their wagon. "Pack up, now!" "But we've still got—" "Now, Evelyn." The urgency in his voice brooked no argument. They loaded quickly, other vendors doing the same. The air had gone still, heavy with electrical threat. They were halfway home when the sky cracked open. It wasn't rain, it was a wall of water, driving horizontal by screaming wind. The horses reared, and Calder fought to control them. In the wagon bed, Nora clung to the preserves, trying to keep them from smashing. "The bridge!" Evelyn shouted over the storm. Ahead, Willow Creek had transformed from a trickle to a monster. Brown water surged over the wooden bridge, carrying branches, debris, and— "Oh, God," Nora gasped. "That's the Hendricks wagon." Sure enough, a wagon lay overturned downstream, 2 small figures clinging to its side. Without thought, Evelyn grabbed the coil of rope from under the seat. "What are you doing?" Calder demanded. "Those are children." She was already climbing down, rain plastering her dress to her skin. Calder cursed but jumped down after her. "Nora, take the reins, get to high ground." No. Go." The girl obeyed, tears mixing with rain. Calder grabbed one end of the rope, tying it around his waist. "You anchor me," he told Evelyn. "Whatever happens, don't let go." He plunged into the torrent. Evelyn braced against a cottonwood, rope burning her hands as the current tried to claim him. He fought toward the wagon, disappeared under brown water, surfaced gasping. The Hendricks children, a boy maybe 7, a girl younger, screamed as the wagon shifted, threatening to roll. Calder reached them just as it broke free, sweeping downstream. He had the boy, was reaching for the girl. The rope went taut, nearly yanking Evelyn off her feet. She dug in, muscles screaming, rain blinding her. Through the chaos, she saw Calder had both children but couldn't fight the current. The rope was their only lifeline, and it was slipping through her bloody hands. Then other hands joined hers. Deputy Calderone, the blacksmith, men from town forming a human chain. Together they hauled Calder and the children to safety. The boy coughed up water, alive. The girl was too still. Lips blue. Calder immediately started pushing on her chest, breathing into her lungs. Once, twice. She vomited creek water and wailed, the sweetest sound Evelyn had ever heard. "Thank God," someone muttered. "Thank God." Mrs. Hendricks arrived, hysterical, gathering her children. The storm was already passing, leaving destruction in its wake. The bridge was gone. Half the market goods floated toward Texas, but everyone was alive. Back home, Evelyn tended Calder's rope burns while he sat rigid at the kitchen table. The children huddled nearby. Even Eli, shocked by how close death had come calling. "That was foolish," Calder said quietly, "risking yourself like that." So was going in after them. "That's my job." "Is it?" She wrapped clean cloth around his palms. "Seems to me protecting children is everyone's job." He caught her wrist, stilling her hands. For a moment, they just looked at each other, soaked, exhausted, alive. Something shifted between them, fragile as spider silk. "Evelyn," he started, then stopped. "Outside, someone was shouting." Calder was on his feet, gun in hand, before the echo died. Through the window, they could see Calderone running toward the house. "Sheriff, you need to see this." They followed him to the gate. There, carved deep into the wood with a knife, were 2 letters P.S. Calder's face went white as bone. "What does it mean?" Evelyn asked, though the ice in her stomach suggested she already knew. "Pike's spurs," Calderone said grimly. "Someone's sending a message." "Get inside," Calder ordered. "All of you, now." That night, Calder didn't pretend to just check windows. He sat on the porch with his rifle, Deputy Calderone beside him. Evelyn put the children to bed, then brought coffee out to the men. "You should be inside," Calder said without looking at her. "So should you." She handed him a cup. "Who is Pike really?" Calderone glanced at his boss. Calder sighed, suddenly looking older than his years. "Ezra Pike led a gang that robbed and murdered their way across 3 territories. I tracked them for 2 years when I was a federal deputy. Finally cornered them at Bent Creek." He sipped the coffee, grimacing at some memory. "Pike's brother died in the shootout. Pike swore he'd take everything I loved in return." "But you caught him." "He was sentenced to hang, escaped during a prison transfer 3 months ago." Calder's knuckles were white around the cup. "I thought he'd gone to Mexico. Seems I was wrong." Evelyn absorbed this, understanding flooding through her. The constant vigilance, the way he kept the children close, the reason he'd advertised for a mail-order bride instead of courting locally, less danger to someone with no connections here. "You could have told me," she said quietly, "before I came." "Would you have come if I had—" She considered lying, then didn't. "I don't know." "That's why I didn't tell you." He finally looked at her, eyes haunted. "But you should know now, being part of this family means being a target. Pike doesn't distinguish between blood and others. If you want to leave." "Do you want me to leave?" The question hung between them. Calderon suddenly found the horizon fascinating. "No," Calder admitted. "God help me, I don't— The children. They're starting to rely on you, and I—" He stopped, jaw working. "Just be careful, please." She wanted to touch him, offer comfort, but didn't know how. Instead, she gathered the empty cups. "I'll bar the doors." Inside, she found Eli standing in the shadows, face pale. "I heard," he said, "about Pike. Eavesdropping is rude. Eli." "Is he going to kill us?" The boy's voice cracked, showing his age. "Like he killed Ma." Evelyn froze. "What?" "She was coming back from town. Her horse spooked, threw her, hit her head on a rock." Eli's hands clenched. "But her horse never spooked at nothing. And there were boot tracks. Pa never said, but I knew someone made that horse rear." "Oh, Eli." Evelyn reached for him, but he stepped back. "That's why I didn't want you here. Everyone Pa cares about dies." The boy fled upstairs, leaving Evelyn stunned in the dark kitchen. She thought of the storm, the children clinging to the wagon, how close death had come. Thought of Calder diving into that torrent without hesitation, of the initials carved in the gate, promise of violence to come. Through the window, she could see him still on watch, rifle across his knees, guarding his family against the consequences of doing right, against an evil that killed women and threatened children. She'd come west seeking a new life. She'd found one, just not the one she'd expected. A family bound by grief and danger. A man carrying the weight of other people's sins. Children who needed more than food and shelter. They needed someone who wouldn't run when shadows grew long. Tomorrow, she'd face Mrs. Albright's judgment and the town's whispers. She'd teach Nora to make biscuits and try again to reach past Eli's armor. She'd hold Rosalie when nightmares came and help Ben with his letters. And she'd bar the doors each night, knowing it might not be enough, but that was the choice. Wasn't it safety was an illusion anywhere? At least here. The danger had a name. At least here. She had something worth defending. Thunder rumbled over Raven Draw, and the first drops of a second storm began to fall. Evelyn lit another lamp and settled in to wait out the night, keeping vigil with the man who'd brought her here to fill an empty space but might have found more than he bargained for. In the morning, there would be flood damage to assess and a bridge to rebuild. There would be questions from the town and decisions to make. But tonight, there was just the rain on the roof and the weight of understanding. She'd traded one kind of danger for another. The question was, had she found something worth the risk? Upstairs, Rosalie whimpered in her sleep. Evelyn rose to check on her, stepping into the role she'd traveled 1,000 miles to fill. Not a mother, not yet a wife, but something in between a woman choosing to stand her ground in a house marked by sorrow and stalked by vengeance. The lamp flickered in the wind that found every crack. Outside, Abraham Calder kept his watch, and somewhere in the darkness, their past circled like a patient predator. But morning would come. It always did. And with it, the chance to build something stronger than fear. The telegram lay on the kitchen table like a coiled snake, its words visible even from where Evelyn stood frozen in the doorway of the old grain shed. She'd been searching for burlap to patch the chicken coop when she'd found it. Tucked between feed sacks, Pike escaped territorial prison target Calder family included. The date was 3 weeks old. 3 weeks Calder had known and said nothing. Shouldn't be snooping where you don't belong. She spun to find Deputy Calderon in the shed entrance, his expression grave. "I wasn't snooping. I needed—" She stopped, lifting her chin. "He should have told me." Calderon removed his hat, running fingers through thinning hair. "Ma'am, there's things about the sheriff you need to understand. That badge he wears, it's cost him everything he's ever loved." "Tell me." The deputy glanced toward the house, then stepped inside, closing the door. Abraham Calder was the best federal deputy marshal the territory ever saw. Tracked outlaws through hell and high water. Pike's spurs was the worst of them robbed, murdered, burned whole homesteads for the joy of watching them flame. Evelyn sank onto a feed barrel, legs suddenly weak. Abe hunted them for 2 years, finally cornered them at Bent Creek. Pike's younger brother died in the shootout. Boy wasn't but 16. Already killed 3 men. Pike swore blood vengeance. Said he'd take everyone Abe loved. Slow and painful. His wife. Calderon nodded. Margaret, sweet woman, gentle as morning. Her horse threw her on a clear day. Good road. Hit her head on the only rock for miles. His voice roughened. Abe never said, but we all wondered. Too convenient. Too clean. Dear God. Evelyn pressed a hand to her stomach. And now Pike's free. And coming. That's why Abe sent for you. Figured a stranger might be safer than a local woman. No connections for Pike to exploit. The deputy's smile was bitter. Didn't count on you being the kind to jump in floodwater to save children. Before Evelyn could respond, young Ben burst through the door. Miss Evelyn, come quick, there's a lady at the house, and she's making Rosie cry. They found chaos in the parlor. Mrs. Albright stood rigid as a fence post while 2 other ladies' aid members flanked her like guards. Rosie clung to Nora's skirts, tears streaming. Eli stood between them and his sisters, fists clenched. What's the meaning of this? Evelyn demanded. Mrs. Albright turned, triumph glittering in her eyes. Miss Harper, how convenient. We're here on official business. What official business involves making children cry? The welfare of these children is the town's concern. She produced a document with an official seal, a petition signed by concerned citizens, requesting the territorial judge review the custody arrangement. Evelyn snatched the paper, scanning quickly. The language was legal, but the meaning clear. They wanted the girls removed from the Calder home. On what grounds? Moral endangerment. Mrs. Albright's smile was sharp as glass. An unmarried woman living in the same house as an unmarried man. The impropriety alone. We're engaged. Evelyn interrupted. Without benefit of ceremony. Without even a proper courtship. You've been here mere weeks. Brought like livestock through the mail. What example does that set for impressionable young girls? A better example than gossips who torment children. Eli spat. Eli, Evelyn warned, but she felt a surge of pride at his defense. Furthermore, Mrs. Albright continued, there are questions about the sheriff's fitness as guardian, the dangerous element he attracts. Why? Just last night someone vandalized his property. What's next? Bullets through windows. These children deserve safety. They have safety. They have a father who loves them. Love doesn't stop bullets. Miss Harper, and now there's talk of Ezra Pike. That's enough. Calder filled the doorway, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He wasn't armed, but something in his stance made Mrs. Albright's companion step back. Sheriff, she said, recovering. We're simply concerned. You're simply leaving. He moved into the room with controlled grace. Now. The judge will hear of this. Circuit Court convenes next week. I suggest you prepare your defense. She swept toward the door, pausing for a parting shot, and perhaps consider what's truly best for these children. After they left, silence hung heavy. Rosie hiccuped against Nora's shoulder. Ben fidgeted with his whittling knife. Eli stared at his father with something between anger and fear. Is it true? The boy asked. They're going to take Nora and Rosie. No one's taking anyone, Calder said firmly, but Evelyn saw the worry in his eyes. That evening, after a subdued supper, Evelyn found Calder at his desk, surrounded by law books and old correspondence. Can they do it? She asked. Take the children. He rubbed his eyes. Judge Thornton is fair, but he's also traditional. An unmarried woman in the house. He gestured helplessly. I should have married you the day you arrived. Why didn't you? The question hung between them. Finally, he said, because you deserved a choice. Time to know what you were choosing. He met her eyes. Do you regret coming? No, the answer came swift and sure. But I need truth between us. All of it. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Rosalie isn't mine by blood. Evelyn blinked. What? My partner, Tom Morrison. Good man. Good deputy. His wife died birthing Rosie, and Tom, he couldn't handle it. Took to drink. Pike's gang caught him alone. Drunk. Defenseless. Calder's jaw worked. They made it last. When I found him, he was still breathing. Asked me to take Rosie, raise her as my own. And Margaret agreed? Margaret insisted. Said any child of Tom's was family. His smile was ghost thin. She was like that. Heart big enough for the whole territory. Evelyn absorbed this revelation. It explained why he cherished all four equally. Why Rosie called him Papa without question. It also gave Mrs. Albright ammunition, a child not his own, living under unclear legal guardianship. We need to marry, she said, before the hearing. That's not why I brought you here. To save me from Abraham. His first name felt strange on her tongue. I'm choosing this. Choosing them? Choosing you. She took a breath. Unless you'd rather face the judge alone. He stood slowly, came around the desk. For a moment, she thought he might touch her. Instead, he said, tomorrow, if Reverend Fairweather will perform it quick. But morning brought new troubles. During the night, someone had poisoned the well. Calderon discovered it when his horse refused to drink. Tests with an unfortunate rat confirmed suspicions enough arsenic to kill everyone in the house. Could have been any time in the past day, Calderon said grimly. We've all been using rain barrels since the storm. Calder sent the children to stay with the Hendricks family, over Eli's vehement protests. Then he did something that surprised Evelyn. He asked for her help. You've got sharp eyes, he said. Look for anything out of place. Boot prints, fabric scraps, anything. They searched methodically. It was Evelyn who spotted it. A small piece of paper caught on the well's interior wall, just visible in the morning light. Calder fished it out with a long pole, unfolded. It revealed a partial map of the town, with the Calder house circled and notes in the margin, Wednesday church, Thursday market, Friday. He's watching us, Evelyn breathed. Learning our patterns. Or someone is doing it for him. Calder's expression was stone. Someone local. The implications chilled her. Someone in town was helping Pike someone who knew their schedules, their vulnerabilities. The hasty wedding that afternoon felt like a military maneuver. Reverend Fairweather, a nervous man with elaborate whiskers, performed the bare minimum ceremony. Witnesses were Calderon and, surprisingly, Martha Willows from the market. Never did like that Albright woman, Martha muttered. Too fond of other people's business. Evelyn wore her best dress, still travel-worn, but clean. Calder had shaved and found a string tie somewhere. The children stood solemn as funeral attendees, though Rosie smiled when Evelyn bent to kiss her forehead after the vows. Guess you're stuck with us now, Eli said afterward. The words were gruff, but something in his eyes had shifted. Guess I am, she agreed. That night, their wedding night, was spent preparing for court. Calder showed Evelyn documents adoption papers for Rosie he'd never filed, fearing questions, letters from Margaret about the children, even a letter from Tom Morrison, written as he died, entrusting his daughter to Calder's care. Will it be enough? She asked. Has to be. A knock interrupted. Calderon entered, face grim. Sheriff, we've got a problem. Hank Pearson just rode in from Chimney Rock. Says he saw riders 4, maybe 5, moving this way, careful like. Calder stood. How far, eh? Day, maybe less. And, Sheriff, Calderon hesitated. Pearson said one of them was wearing a deputy's badge, old style, like federal marshals used to carry. The blood drained from Calder's face. Wardell. Who's Wardell? Evelyn asked. Pike's right hand, former federal deputy gone bad. I testified at his trial he swore he'd see me dead. Calder strapped on his gun. He must have broken Pike out. What do we do? We get ready. Calder looked at her, and she saw fear there, not for himself, but for them. Tomorrow's the hearing. Pike knows we'll all be in one place. Distracted. It's what he's been waiting for. They spent the night in preparation. Calderon quietly gathered trusted men. Calder cleaned weapons and checked ammunition. Evelyn helped, trying not to think about why her new husband was teaching her to load a shotgun on their wedding night. If something happens, he said, take the children and run. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Evelyn. No. She met his eyes steadily. That's what marriage means, for better or worse. I made that choice with my eyes open. He touched her face then, just barely, fingers ghosting across her cheek. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed, winning a startled laugh from him. But you're stuck with me now. Sheriff Calder. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it the weight of judgment both from the territorial court and from whatever vengeance rode toward them through the desert. But as Evelyn dressed for court, she felt oddly calm. She'd found her place, her people, her purpose. Now she just had to fight to keep them. Through the window, she could see riders on the horizon, dust clouds rising in the morning light, justice and vengeance racing to see which would arrive first. She loaded the shotgun, tucked extra shells in her pocket, and went to wake her family. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The house of cards Calder had built to protect his children was falling. But maybe, just maybe, they could build something stronger from the ruins. The storm hit Windless Hill just as they reached the narrow trail. Lightning split the purple sky, and thunder shook the earth beneath their feet. The prisoner transport had gone wrong from the start. The man they were moving to the county jail had friends, and now those friends were somewhere in these hills. Get to the root cellar, Calder shouted over the wind, half carrying their prisoner while Calderon covered their backs. Evelyn ran ahead with the children, herding them toward the old homestead's cellar. Rain hit like bullets, turning the ground to mud. She slipped, caught herself, kept moving. Behind them, gunfire cracked through the storm. The cellar door was heavy, swollen with rain. She and Eli struggled to lift it while Nora shielded Rosie and Ben from the worst of the downpour. Finally, it gave way, revealing wooden steps descending into darkness. Down, quickly! The children scrambled below. Evelyn turned to see Calder and Calderon racing toward them, the prisoner slung between them. More gunshots closer now. They tumbled into the cellar just as riders crested the hill. Calder slammed the door shut, barring it from inside. The space was cramped, meant for storing vegetables. Not hiding 6 people and a prisoner. Root vegetables in burlap sacks, shelves of preserves, and barely room to stand. Papa, I'm scared, Rosie whimpered. Shh, little bird. Just a storm. It'll pass. But they all knew it wasn't just the storm they were hiding from. The prisoner, a weasel-faced man named Curtis, laughed low. Pike's boys don't give up easy. You're trapped like rats. Shut your mouth, Calderon warned. Thunder crashed directly overhead, and in the flash of lightning through the door cracks, Evelyn saw Calder's face. Worry etched deep lines around his eyes. They were outnumbered, possibly surrounded, with children to protect. The cellar was growing smaller by the moment. Eli pressed against one wall, trying to seem brave. Nora held Rosie, humming softly to calm her. Ben clutched his whittling knife like it might protect them from bullets. Another crash of thunder, and the door shuddered. Not from wind, someone was trying to break in. Calder shoved Curtis into the corner and positioned himself at the door, gun drawn. Calderon took the other side. Evelyn found herself pressed against Calder in the tight space, close enough to feel his heart racing despite his calm exterior. "When I say run, you take them out the back," he murmured, lips nearly touching her ear. "There's a ventilation shaft behind those potato sacks. I'm not leaving you." "Evelyn." The door exploded inward. Rain and chaos poured in. A man's silhouette appeared, gun raised. Calder fired. The man fell backward into the mud. Another took his place. More gunfire, deafening in the enclosed space. Calderon grunted, clutching his shoulder. "Deputies hit!" Eli shouted. In the confusion, Curtis made his move. Lunging for Nora and Rosie, "Pike'll pay gold for the sheriff's brats." Evelyn reacted without thinking. She grabbed a preserve jar and swung it hard, catching Curtis across the temple. He dropped like a sack of grain. "Back exit, now," Calder ordered. They scrambled for the ventilation shaft. It was barely big enough for a child, but there was no choice. Eli went first, pulling Rosie through. Nora pushed Ben ahead of her. "Go," Evelyn told Calder. "I'll help Calderon." Like hell. Another attacker appeared in the doorway. This time Evelyn fired the shotgun Calder had given her, the kick slamming her against the wall. The man vanished back into the storm. "My wife's got teeth," Calderon wheezed, attempting humor despite the blood soaking his shirt. They squeezed through the shaft, Evelyn, then Calderon with help. Finally Calder backing out while covering their escape. They emerged into chaos. Rain hammered down, turning the world into a gray blur. Lightning showed riders circling, trying to cut off escape routes. The ravine. Calder decided, too narrow for horses. They ran, slipping in mud, half blind from rain. Evelyn carried Rosie while supporting Calderon. The children stayed close, Ben surprisingly steady despite his fear. Behind them, shouts and gunfire. Ahead, the ravine yawned like a wound in the earth. They skidded down the slope, using roots and rocks to control their descent. At the bottom, a shallow stream had become a torrent. "Follow the water," Calder commanded. "Stay low." They sloshed through knee-deep current, the ravine walls providing cover. Thunder echoed between the rocks, making it impossible to hear pursuit. Evelyn's skirts dragged heavy with water and mud. Rosie clung to her neck, tiny body shaking with cold and fear. Then a figure ahead, one of Pike's men, cut off from the others. Rifle aimed. Eli threw his knife, a child's whittling blade, not meant for violence. But it struck the man's gun arm. He cursed, weapon dropping. Calder was on him in seconds. A brief struggle in the water before the outlaw lay still. "You did good, son," Calder told Eli, retrieving the small knife. "Real good." The boy stood straighter despite his chattering teeth. They found shelter in a cave cut by ancient waters. Barely more than a hollow in the rock, but dry enough. Calderon slumped against the wall, face gray. Evelyn tore strips from her petticoat to bind his shoulder. "Just a graze," he insisted, fooling no one. Calder stood watch at the entrance. The storm was passing, thunder growing distant. In the relative quiet, they could hear horses above, men calling to each other. "They're leaving," Nora whispered hopefully. "No," Calder said. "They're regrouping, waiting for daylight." Evelyn finished with Calderon and moved to her husband's side. In the cave's dim light, she could see the weight he carried, not just of this moment, but all the moments leading here, all the violence that followed him like a shadow. "This isn't what you signed up for," he said quietly. "I signed up for you, for them." She gestured at the children huddled together for warmth. "This is part of it. Most wives don't spend their honeymoon being shot at. Most husbands don't dive into floodwaters to save neighbor children." He almost smiled. Then, surprising her, he pulled her against him. Not romantic, there was too much danger, too much fear. But for a moment, She felt his walls crack, felt him draw strength from her presence. "Papa?" Ben's voice, small in the darkness. "Are we going to die?"
"No, son, I promise you that."
"How do you know?" Calder looked at his children, Eli trying to be grown, Nora mothering the younger ones, Ben clutching his returned knife, Rosie curled trusting against Evelyn. "Because we're together," he said simply, "and together we're stronger than any storm." They waited out the night. Evelyn dozed fitfully against Calder's shoulder while he kept watch. The children slept in a pile like puppies. Calderon drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering about his Rosa and their new baby. Dawn came pale and watery. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and somehow fragile. Calder scouted carefully, then returned. "They've pulled back to the main trail. Probably think we're headed for town." "Aren't we?" "No. There's a line shack 2 miles north. Abandoned but solid. We hole up there. Send Eli for help." "I won't leave," the boy started. "You're the fastest runner. The only one who can get through without being spotted." Calder gripped his son's shoulder. "I'm trusting you with their lives." Eli swallowed hard, then nodded. They made it to the line shack as the sun climbed higher. It was rough one room, a rusty stove, bunks with moldy straw, but the walls were thick, the doors solid, and there was a well with clean water. Evelyn tended Calderon properly while Calder prepared defenses. The children helped Nora organizing supplies, Ben filling water buckets, even Rosie gathering kindling. "Like a little fortress," Nora said, trying for optimism. Before Eli left, Evelyn pulled him aside. "Be careful. Be smart. We're counting on you." "I won't let you down." He paused, then added quietly, "Ma." The word hit her like a physical blow. Before she could respond, he was gone, slipping through the sage toward town. They settled in to wait. Calder taught Evelyn better shooting positions. She showed Nora how to load ammunition. They made a game of it for the younger ones, anything to keep fear at bay. "Tell us about Boston," Ben asked as afternoon wore on. So she did. Told them about snow higher than their heads, about factories that breathed smoke like dragons, about ships from far places carrying strange cargo. She painted word pictures until even Calderon was listening, transported from their danger. "Why'd you leave?" Nora asked. "If it was so grand." "Because grand isn't the same as good." Evelyn said, "Because I wanted to choose my own life instead of having it chosen for me." "And you chose us," Ben seemed amazed. "Every day," she said firmly. "I choose you every day." Calder watched her from his post by the window, something soft in his storm-gray eyes. As the sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold, dust appeared on the horizon. Riders, coming fast. "Everyone ready," Calder commanded, but his voice was calm. Whatever came, they'd face it as a family. Evelyn checked her shotgun, said a quick prayer, and took her position. Through the window, she could see the riders growing larger, their intent unknown. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She'd found what she'd traveled 1,000 miles to find: not safety, not comfort, but something worth fighting for. People worth protecting. The riders drew closer. In the distance, a hawk cried out, circling on thermals above the desert. And in the line shack, a mail-order bride turned frontier wife prepared to defend the family she'd chosen, come hell or high water. The harvest fair stretched across Main Street like a patchwork quilt of colors and sounds. Banjo music competed with fiddles. Children shrieked with delight at puppet shows, and the air smelled of apple pie and roasting corn. For one day, Lone Mesa forgot its troubles and celebrated survival through another year. Evelyn adjusted Rosie on her hip, watching Ben chase other boys through the crowd. Nora stood with friends near the pie contest booth, almost smiling. Even Eli had abandoned his usual scowl to help at the horseshoe tournament. Never seen the children so carefree. Calder said beside her. He'd worn his good shirt, even polished his badge. In the afternoon light, he looked younger, less burdened. They deserve it, Evelyn replied. After everything... 3 weeks had passed since the standoff at Windlass Hill. The riders had been legitimate, a posse from the next county looking for Curtis. Not Pike's men. But the fear had been real, the danger true enough. Since then, Calder had barely left the children's sight. Sheriff Mayor Hutchins waved them over to the judging platform. Bring that lovely wife of yours. Time to judge the baking contest. Evelyn blushed. The town had slowly warmed to her after the hearing, where Judge Thornton had dismissed Mrs. Albright's petition with prejudice. Her marriage to Calder, combined with testimony about her actions during the flood, had swayed opinion. They made their way through the crowd, greeting neighbors, accepting congratulations on their marriage. For a moment, Evelyn could pretend they were just another family enjoying the fair. Then Nora screamed. The sound cut through the festivities like a blade. Evelyn spun, searching desperately through the crowd. There Nora's blue dress near the puppet stage. But the girl herself was gone. Where is she? Calder's voice was deadly calm, but Evelyn saw his hand move to his gun. Ben came running, face white. A man he grabbed her said to give you this. The boy held out a playing card, the ace of spades with a horseshoe nail driven through it. Pike, Calderon breathed, appearing at Calder's shoulder. The fair dissolved into chaos. Women grabbed their children. Men looked to the sheriff for orders, but Calder stood frozen, staring at the card like it might tell him how to save his daughter. Abraham, Evelyn gripped his arm. What do we do? He wants me to follow. Alone. His voice was hollow. If I take a posse, He couldn't finish. Then we think... Evelyn's mind raced. He took her in broad daylight, in a crowd. He wants panic, wants you running blind into a trap. She's right, Calderon said. Pike's theatrical. This is all show. A commotion near the church, people pointing at the bell tower. Something white fluttered from the highest window. Calder was running before anyone could stop him. Evelyn close behind. Inside the church, they found Reverend Fairweather tied and gagged in his office. But no Nora. Only another card. This time with a message, Red Gully, sunset. Come alone or she dies. It's a trap, Calderon stated the obvious. Of course it's a trap. Calder checked his weapons with mechanical precision. Doesn't matter. You can't go alone, Evelyn protested. Watch me. Abraham Calder, you listen to me. She stepped in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. That man has taken our daughter. She's not your... She became mine the moment I chose this family, and we protect our own, together. They stared at each other, wills clashing. Around them, the church began filling with townspeople, word spreading like wildfire. Sheriff, Martha Willows pushed forward. My boy saw riders heading toward Boxy Canyon, not Red Gully, 3 men, one carrying something over his saddle. A decoy, Calderon mused. Split our forces. Evelyn's mind clicked. No, Pike's showing off, but he's also practical. Red Gully's too open. Boxy Canyon, that's where he'd really go. Enclosed, limited access, easy to defend. Calder studied her, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Then he turned to the crowd. I need volunteers. This ends today. The response was immediate. Men who'd whispered about the mail-order bride now stood ready to follow her husband. Even Mrs. Albright's husband stepped forward, rifle in hand. I'll take 10 men to Red Gully. Calderon said, make noise, draw attention. And we'll take the back trail to Boxy. Calder agreed, quiet-like. I'm coming, Evelyn stated. Evelyn, I'm a better shot than half these men, and you know it. Besides, she managed a grim smile. Someone needs to watch your back. They prepared quickly. Evelyn changed into riding clothes, split skirt she'd made for ranch work. Sturdy boots. Eli appeared, Ben at his side. "We're coming too," Eli announced. "Absolutely not. Pa, she's our sister, and Ben, tell him." The younger boy stepped forward. "I've been exploring Boxy Canyon all summer, found caves, hidden trails. I know ways they don't." Calder wavered. Evelyn made the choice. Ben guides us to the canyon edge. Then he and Eli fall back with the horses. No arguments? The boys nodded, grateful to be included at all. They set out as the sun peaked Calder, Evelyn, 5 trusted men, and the boys. Deputy Calderon's group made a show of riding toward Red Gully, dust cloud visible for miles. Ben proved invaluable, leading them through deer trails and dry washes. They approached Boxy Canyon from the north, where ancient rock falls created natural cover. "There," Ben whispered, pointing to a cluster of boulders. "That's where I'd camp. Water seep, good sight lines. Only one way in." Sure enough, smoke rose from behind the rocks. Through Calder's field glasses, they counted 4 horses. "I see movement," one man reported. "Blue fabric that's Miss Nora's dress." Relief flooded through Evelyn. Alive. Their girl was alive. "All right," Calder strategized. "Henderson, Mills, work around to the east. Cut off their escape. Davis, you're our sharpshooter, find high ground. Rest of us go straight in. But careful, remember, Nora's in there." "What about us?" Eli demanded. "You did your part. Fall back to—" Gunfire erupted from the canyon. Not at them from inside the camp. Shouts, confusion, more shots. "Go," Calder ordered. They rushed forward. Caution abandoned. Evelyn's heart hammered as they cleared the boulder field. The camp was in chaos, horses rearing, men diving for cover, and there was Nora, hands tied but on her feet, having somehow knocked a pot of coffee onto the nearest outlaw. "That's my girl," Evelyn breathed. Then she saw him. Ezra Pike stood behind Nora, one hand tangled in her hair, gun pressed to her temple. He was smaller than expected, wiry and weathered, with eyes like a rabid dog. "Stop right there," Calder. Pike's voice carried that edge of madness. "Been waiting for this moment. You watching while I take something precious." "Let her go. Pike, this is between us." "Everything's between us. My brother's blood is between us." Pike jerked Nora's head back, making her cry out. "You remember Jimmy, 16 years old? You shot him down like a dog?" "Your brother was robbing a stage. He'd already killed the driver." "He was a boy." "He made his choice, just like you're making yours." Calder stepped forward slowly. "But Nora didn't. She's innocent." "So was my ma when she got word her baby was dead. Grief killed her sure as a bullet." Pike's gun hand shook. "You took my family. Only fair I take yours." Movement in Evelyn's peripheral vision. Wardell, Pike's right hand, circling for a clear shot at Calder. Without thinking, she raised her shotgun. "I wouldn't," she called out, surprising everyone. "Unless you want to see how good a mail-order bride can shoot." Wardell froze. Pike's attention split for a crucial second. A knife flew through the air. Ben's whittling blade, thrown with a child's desperate strength. It struck Pike's gun arm. Just a glancing blow, but enough. The gun wavered. Nora twisted free, dropping and rolling. Everything happened at once. Calder's gun cleared leather. Pike swung his weapon toward the children's hiding spot. Evelyn fired. Buckshot catching Pike's shoulder, spinning him. More gunfire. Davis from his perch, taking down one of Pike's men. Henderson and Mills charging from the east. Wardell made a break for the horses. Calder's shot caught him mid-stride. He fell hard, didn't get up. Pike was on his knees, clutching his bleeding shoulder, still reaching for his dropped gun. Calder kicked it away. stood over the man who'd haunted his family.
Do it!
Pike snarled.
Finish what you started.
Evelyn held her breath. She saw Calder's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the war in his eyes, justice versus vengeance. Pa, Nora's voice, small and scared. The moment broke. Calder holstered his weapon. You're under arrest. Ezra Pike. You'll hang, but it'll be legal. The law's going to kill you, not me. They tied Pike and his surviving men, tended wounds. Nora clung to Evelyn, shaking but whole. When Eli and Ben crept from their hiding spot, she grabbed them too.
Did you see?
Ben asked excitedly.
I got him just like David and Goliath.
We saw, Evelyn assured him, ruffling his hair.
You saved your sister.
We all did, Calder corrected, pulling his whole family into his arms. Every one of us. The ride back to town was subdued. Pike, belly down over a saddle, had stopped cursing and fallen into sullen silence. The sun set, painting the desert in shades of redemption. At the canyon mouth, they met Calderon's group returning from Red Gully. The deputy took one look at their prisoners and grinned.
Knew that was a decoy. You always were too smart for your own good. Sheriff?
The fair had dissolved into anxious waiting. When they rode down Main Street, Nora safe on Evelyn's saddle, a cheer went up. Even Mrs. Albright dabbed at her eyes. That night, after Pike was locked away awaiting transport, after Nora was tucked safely in bed, after the town finally quieted, Evelyn found Calder on the porch. He sat in Margaret's old rocking chair, staring at the stars.
You all right?
She asked, settling beside him.
He's right, you know. Pike.
I did kill his brother, broke his family. His brother broke their family when he chose violence. You upheld the law.
The law?
He laughed, short and bitter. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth the cost.
Ask Nora. Ask the families Jimmy Pike would have destroyed if you hadn't stopped him.
She took his hand.
The law isn't perfect,
but it's better than letting men like Pike make their own rules. He squeezed her fingers.
When did you get so wise?
Somewhere between Boston and here. She leaned against his shoulder. Abraham, that moment in the canyon, when you didn't shoot, I've never been prouder of anyone. I wanted to, God help me, I wanted to. But you didn't, because you're a good man. A man of law, not vengeance. She paused. The children see that. I see that. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to night sounds, crickets, a distant coyote, Ben snoring through his window, the peace they'd fought for settling around them like a blanket.
Evelyn?
Calder's voice was soft.
Thank you.
For what? For being exactly who you are. For choosing us. He turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw not the cold lawman or the haunted widower, but just Abraham, her husband, still learning to hope again. I love you. Should have said it sooner.
I love you too,
she replied, every complicated, dangerous, wonderful bit of this life. Inside, Rosie cried out in her sleep. They rose together to check on her, partners in all things. The ghost of Margaret seemed to smile from the shadows, blessing this new chapter. Pike would hang. The past would slowly heal, and in a house that had known too much sorrow, love was taking root again, sturdy and determined as desert wildflowers after rain. The dark clouds gathering over Boxey Canyon looked like bruised flesh against the evening sky. Evelyn pressed herself against the rock wall, shotgun heavy in her grip, listening to Pike's voice echo through the narrow passage. I know you're out there. Calder got your woman and boy with you too. Can smell the fear from here. Beside her, Abraham's jaw tightened. They'd tracked Pike's gang for 2 days after Nora's rescue at the fair, following a trail of stolen horses and terrorized homesteads. Now, cornered in this maze of stone, Pike had nothing left to lose.
Papa.
Eli's whisper was barely audible. The boy had insisted on coming, saying he'd earned the right after helping save Nora. Against her better judgment, Evelyn had supported him. "Stay down," Abraham ordered. "Both of you." They'd entered the canyon at dawn with 8 men. Now only 5 remained, 3 wounded in the initial ambush. Sent back with Deputy Calderon, Pike had chosen his ground well. "You took everything from me, Calder." Pike's voice bounced off canyon walls, making it hard to pinpoint. "My brother, my men, my life." "You took those things yourself," Abraham called back. "Every choice you made led here." Gunfire erupted. Rock chips stung Evelyn's face as bullets struck near her head. She pressed flatter, heart hammering. Somewhere in this labyrinth, Pike had at least 4 men, maybe more. "Mills is hit," someone shouted. Evelyn peered around the edge. John Mills lay in the open, clutching his leg, trying to drag himself to cover. Without thinking, she moved.
Evelyn, no.
She was already running, staying low, zigzagging across the killing ground. Bullets whined past like angry hornets. She reached Mills, grabbed his collar, pulled with strength born of desperation. Together they tumbled behind a boulder as lead splattered where they'd been.
"Crazy woman,"
Mills gasped, but gratitude shone in his eyes. She tore fabric from her skirt, binding his wound. Through the chaos, she heard Abraham directing return fire, trying to keep Pike's men pinned, but they were outnumbered, outpositioned. There, Eli pointed to a narrow ledge running along the canyon wall.
"I can get above them."
"Absolutely not," Abraham and Evelyn said in unison. But the boy was already moving, young and agile as a mountain goat. Abraham cursed, provided covering fire. Evelyn watched her stepson climb, pride and terror warring in her chest. Thunder rumbled overhead. The first fat raindrops began to fall. "Sheriff," one of Pike's men she recognized Ward Dell's voice. "Let's make a deal. You walk away. We let your family live." "Counteroffer," Abraham shouted. "Surrender now. You'll get a trial." Harsh laughter. "We've seen your trials. End of a rope ain't much incentive." The rain intensified, turning from drops to sheets. Within minutes, the canyon floor ran with water. Evelyn remembered the flash flood weeks ago, how quickly drought-hard ground became deadly. "Abraham," she called, "the rain." He understood immediately. These canyons were death traps in storms, but Pike's men, unfamiliar with the territory, might not realize the danger. A cry from above, Eli had reached position. She saw him wedge himself into a crevice, Ben's knife in hand. What was he planning? The answer came moments later. A rope, one of Pike's own climbing ropes, anchored above their position, suddenly went slack. Cut! Shouts of alarm as someone fell, hitting hard. "One down," Henderson muttered with grim satisfaction. But the water was rising, already ankle-deep, flowing faster each second. They needed to move up or drown. "Fall back to higher ground," Abraham ordered. They retreated, carrying Mills between them. The rain hammered down, turning visibility to nothing. In the confusion, Evelyn lost sight of Eli. "Where's the boy?" she shouted. Abraham's face went white. He started back, but a massive crack of lightning struck the canyon rim. Rock sheared away, tons of stone crashing down, blocking the path. "Eli!" No answer, only rain and rising water. Then movement above. Not Eli, Pike himself, traversing the upper ledge, gun in hand. He'd seen the boy. Evelyn didn't remember raising the shotgun, didn't remember aiming. The world narrowed to the sight of Pike turning his weapon toward where Eli hid. She fired. At that range, in that rain, hitting anything was miracle, but the buckshot pattern was wide. Pike jerked, stumbled, his shot going wild. He grabbed for purchase on the slick rock, missed, and tumbled into space. The fall wasn't far, maybe 20 feet, but he landed badly in the rushing water, leg bent at an impossible angle. His scream cut through the storm. Ezra Wardell abandoned cover, splashing toward his leader. It was the opening Abraham needed. His rifle spoke once. Wardell spun and fell face first into the torrent. The water, now waist deep, caught him, swept him away.
Pa Evelyn,
Eli's voice, blessed and alive. The boy appeared on a ledge, soaked but whole.
this way I found a path.
They climbed. Evelyn's skirts, heavy with water, threatened to drag her down. She hiked them up, modesty be damned, and scrambled after Abraham. Behind them, Pike's remaining men faced a choice: surrender or drown. They chose surrender, throwing down weapons, begging for rescue. It took all of them working together, even Eli, to pull the outlaws to safety. By the time they reached the canyon rim, the flash flood roared below like a living thing, carrying away all evidence of the battle. Pike lay on solid ground, legs splinted with rifle stocks, face gray with pain. He looked smaller now, just a broken man who'd chosen hate over healing. "Should have let me drown," he muttered when Abraham knelt beside him. "That's not how justice works." "Justice!" Pike laughed, coughed, spat pink foam. "Internal injuries from the fall. Your wife sure delivered her own justice. Hell of a shot." Abraham glanced at Evelyn, something unreadable in his eyes.
"Yes, she is."
They made a rough travois, began the slow journey back to town. The storm passed, leaving desert flowers blooming in its wake. Eli walked beside Evelyn, quiet and thoughtful. "I was scared," he admitted finally.
"So was I."
"But you ran out anyway, to save Mills."
"Being brave doesn't mean not feeling fear. It means acting despite it."
The boy digested this. "Ma would have liked you." The words hit harder than any bullet. Evelyn blinked back tears.
"I hope so."
"No." Eli took her hand, squeezed it.
"I know so."
They reached Lone Mesa as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of redemption. The whole town turned out. Word had already spread. Doc Morrison took charge of the wounded. Judge Thornton, in town for circuit court, assured proper legal proceedings. That night, after statements were given and prisoners secured, Evelyn found Abraham sitting alone in his office. His badge lay on the desk, and he stared at it like it might hold answers. "Thinking of quitting?" she asked. "Thinking of a lot of things." He looked up at her.
"You could have killed Pike. Would have been justified. Most would have."
"I didn't shoot to kill. I shot to stop him threatening Eli."
"I know."
He pulled her onto his lap, buried his face in her hair.
"God,
"Evelyn, when I saw you run into those bullets, when I saw Pike aiming at Eli," they held each other, processing the day's terror and triumph. Outside, Lone Mesa settled into evening routines, families gathering for supper, children called in from play. Normal life, made possible by those willing to stand between chaos and peace. "I've been thinking," Abraham said eventually, "about the future." "Oh." "The territorial government wants me to take a federal position again, marshal for the whole region. More pay, more authority." He paused. "More danger." Evelyn considered. "What do you want?" "I want our children safe, but I also want them proud. Want to build something better than what we inherited." He met her eyes. "It's not my decision alone anymore. We're partners in everything." "Then we decide together. Talk to the children, too. This affects all of us." He smiled, the expression transforming his face.
"When did I get so lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it."
She kissed him softly.
"You sent for a mail-order bride.
You got a frontier woman. Package deal included sharpshooting and impromptu rescue services. Best bargain I ever made." A knock interrupted. Nora peered in.
"Supper's ready. I helped Ben make biscuits. They're only slightly burned."
"An improvement," Abraham said gravely. "We'll be right there." As Nora left, Evelyn stood,
straightening her torn and muddy dress. Tomorrow she'd need new clothes. Tomorrow there'd be legal proceedings and decisions about the future. But tonight, there was family supper, children safe under their roof, a husband who'd learned to choose law over vengeance, a town learning to see her as more than the mail-order bride. She'd traveled across a continent seeking a new life, in Boxy Canyon, facing down outlaws in a flash flood. She'd claimed it with both hands. "Coming?" Abraham asked, offering his arm. "Wherever you go," she promised, meaning it. They walked to the kitchen together, where lamplight spilled golden and welcoming, where voices raised in gentle teasing and laughter, where love was rebuilding what loss had torn down. Behind them, in the office, Abraham's badge caught the last rays of sunset, polished and waiting. Whatever tomorrow brought federal appointment or local peacekeeping, they'd face it as they'd faced everything else. Together, family, unbreakable. The desert night settled over Lone Mesa, stars emerging like promises. And in the sheriff's house at the end of Main Street, the mail-order bride who'd become so much more served slightly burned biscuits to the family she'd crossed a continent to find. Home, finally, irreversibly, home. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps where Judge Thornton waited. The territorial court had cleared Abraham of all charges related to Pike's capture. Now, only formalities remained and a wedding to make right. "Ready?" Abraham asked, adjusting his string tie for the 10th time. Evelyn smoothed her new dress pale blue cotton with tiny flowers, sewn by Martha Willows as a wedding gift. Their first ceremony had been hurried, desperate. This one would be different. "Ma, you look beautiful." Ben bounced on his toes, clutching the rings they'd fashioned from Margaret's old pearl necklace. "Like a princess," Rosie added, twirling in her own new dress. Even Eli had cleaned up, hair slicked down, wearing his father's old vest taken in to fit. Only Nora seemed nervous, fidgeting with the wildflower bouquet she'd picked that morning. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Evelyn asked. "Nothing, just—" The girl bit her lip. "Is it wrong to be happy when Mama—" Evelyn knelt, heedless of dust on her hem. "Your Mama loved you all fiercely. She'd want nothing more than to see you happy, to see your father happy. You think she'd approve of you?" "I hope so. I'm not trying to replace her. Nora, I'm just trying to love you all the best I can." Nora threw her arms around Evelyn's neck. "You already do." The church bell rang, Mrs. Albright's doing, insisting everything be proper this time. Half the town packed the pews, curious to see the mail-order bride properly wed. Reverend Fairweather beamed as they entered. "Dearly beloved, we gather today to witness what God has already blessed, a family united by choice and strengthened by trial." Abraham took Evelyn's hands, his own steady now. No more shadows in his eyes, no more walls between them. "Evelyn Harper," he said, voice carrying to the back rows. "You answered an advertisement for a wife. What you found was a broken man with 4 children and more trouble than any sensible woman would tolerate." Soft laughter from the congregation. "But you stayed, through floods and gunfights, gossip and judgment. You became mother to my children, partner in my work, and—" His voice gentled. "The love I never thought I'd find again." Evelyn blinked back tears. Abraham called her. "I came west seeking a new life. What I found was a man who'd sacrifice everything for justice and family, who showed me that love isn't just words, it's choosing each other every day, especially the hard days." "The rings," Reverend Fairweather prompted. Ben stepped forward proudly, nearly dropping them in his excitement. The repurposed pearls caught the light streaming through windows, old love transformed into new promises. "Do you, Abraham, take this woman?" "I do. No hesitation." "Do you, Evelyn, take this man?" "Forever and always." "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you husband and wife. What God has joined, let no man tear asunder."
Abraham kissed her as the church erupted in cheers. Even Mrs. Albright dabbed her eyes, muttering about proper ceremonies to hide her emotion. Outside, tables groaned under the weight of a community feast. Every family had contributed something: pies, roasted meats, preserves, fresh bread. Musicians tuned instruments for dancing as children raced between adults' legs. Speech, someone called. "Let's hear from the newlyweds." Abraham looked at Evelyn, who nodded encouragement. He climbed onto a crate, pulling her up beside him. "Friends, neighbors," he began. "6 months ago, I was a man going through motions, keeping law, raising children, but not really living. Then this woman stepped off a stagecoach and changed everything." "She was so scared," Eli called out, grinning. "Looked like she might faint." "I was terrified," Evelyn admitted, laughing. "But sometimes the best things come from facing our fears." To the Calders, Deputy Calderon raised his glass. "May your troubles be behind you and your joys ahead." The celebration continued as the sun traveled across the sky. Evelyn danced with each of her children, even got Eli to attempt a waltz. Abraham partnered every widow and spinster, duty done with genuine warmth. As evening approached, they slipped away to the rise overlooking town, the spot where Margaret lay buried. Headstone weathered but carefully tended. "Think she'd understand?" Abraham asked quietly. "I think she picked me herself," Evelyn said. "Sent you looking for someone strong enough to love you all through anything." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her head. "The federal marshal position, I turned it down." "You did." "Lone Mesa needs a sheriff. Our children need stability. And He turned her to face him. "I need to build something lasting with you. Here, home. No regrets. None. Pike's gone. The past is settled. Time to focus on the future." They stood quietly, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Below, the town bustled with life, their community, their people. "Pama," Nora's voice carried up the hill. "Ben's stuck in a tree again." "Some things never change." Abraham sighed. "Would we want them to?" Evelyn took his hand. "Come on, Sheriff. Duty calls." They walked back together, fingers intertwined, to where their children waited. Ben dangled from a cottonwood. Rosie offered unhelpful advice. Eli pretended not to care while positioning himself to catch his brother. And Nora directed operations with inherited authority. Their family, perfectly imperfect. Later, after Ben was rescued. After Rosie fell asleep in Abraham's arms. After the musicians packed up and neighbors drifted home. Evelyn stood in her kitchen, truly hers, now making coffee for the morning. The house felt different, fuller. The shadows that had clung to corners were gone, chased away by laughter and hope. Margaret's china shepherdess still stood on the mantel, but now it watched over a living home instead of a shrine. "Can't sleep," Abraham appeared in the doorway. "Too happy to sleep." He crossed to her, drew her close. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing what we could be, not just what we were. For being brave enough to claim it." "We all claimed it," she corrected, "together." Through the window, stars wheeled overhead in the vast western sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There was talk of the railroad coming through, bringing change to Lone Mesa. The children would grow, face their own trials. Life would continue its complex dance of joy and sorrow. But tonight, in a house that had known too much grief, love had taken permanent root. The mail-order bride had become a wife, mother, partner. The grieving widower had remembered how to hope. 4 children had learned that families could be mended, made stronger at the broken places. Abraham spun her slowly in the kitchen, humming off key. "Mrs. Calder, may I have this dance?" "Always, Mr. Calder, always." They danced by lamplight while the desert wind whispered promises through the eaves. Outside, Lone Mesa slept peacefully under the sheriff's protection. Inside, the Calder family had finally, truly, come home. In the morning, there would be chores and challenges. Ben's mischief, Rosie's questions, Nora's growing independence, Eli's journey toward manhood. There would be laws to enforce and justice to uphold, gardens to tend and meals to cook, an ordinary life made extraordinary by the choosing of it. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, there was just this: a man and woman who'd found each other across a continent, dancing in their kitchen, building forever one day at a time. The lamp flickered, casting moving shadows on the walls, and in those shadows, perhaps, Margaret smiled her blessing on this family she'd loved. Now, whole again in a different way, not replacing what was lost, but honoring it by living fully, loving bravely, choosing joy, home, family, love. Everything Evelyn Harper had crossed a continent to find. Everything Abraham Calder had thought lost forever. Alive and thriving in a sheriff's house at the edge of the frontier. The music of their hearts played on, writing a new chapter in an old story, the story of people who choose each other, again and again, until choosing becomes as natural as breathing, until love becomes not just a word but a living thing, strong as desert stone and gentle as spring rain. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss your thoughts on Evelyn and Abraham's journey. If you enjoyed this tale from the Old West, please subscribe to Wild West Night. Hit that like button, and don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover these frontier stories of love, courage, and family. Your support means the world and helps me bring you more adventures from the American frontier. Until the next time, partners.